Um, just kind of before we dive into things, I just wanted to address a few concerns and questions we'd received about these Pine Island play-by-play discussions. Um, I just kind of want to apologize on the city side. I don't think we maybe added the appropriate context when we rolled these out. These are really just informational meetings, kind of foster some discussion with community members. It's all just city staff based. This is not an official committee of the city. There's no city officials here. There's no decision-making authority. It's solely just for informational purposes. Um, if anyone isn't able to join, I know the times have been a little inconvenient. Unfortunately, I know that's when staff is on the clock and able to host these. If there are any questions that pop up before and after, we left it kind of vague to allow for people to take it in whatever direction they would like. City Hall is always available, email or phone, to reach out and just ask questions before or after these discussions if you're not able to make it. But again, just wanted to let everyone know that it's really just for informational purposes only and a pretty informal thing. There's no decisions being made or any stakes really attached to it. Just trying to be transparent, get information out there for people, and maybe foster some questions later on down the road.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for that. So we'll get started here. Housing in Pine Island. I have Mitch Massman with me, Mossman, sorry. And he is part of our EDA here. So he'll kind of go over this with you.
Yeah, so just kind of first and foremost, what is housing? I think this should go mostly without saying, but housing is obviously single family housing, townhomes, modular homes, trailer courts, apartments, condos. All of those things encompass the entire housing stock within Pine Island. For the most part, our growth has been in single family housing and townhouses. We do have a recent apartment complex that went up. For the most part, that's been pretty steadily full. But that's primarily been where our growth has been, is in that single family market. Particularly if you look at housing prices, it's definitely on the higher end. You're looking at that 450, 400 plus range of housing that's being built right now. And that is one of the hurdles that we are trying to figure out a way to get over, because we understand that housing affordability is a very important part of this entire discussion around housing. Is how can we help to bring those prices down? Is there a way to bring those prices down? How can we encourage developers to build homes or open up homes for people who can't afford the 400 plus houses, that that 200 to 350 mark? How can we get more of those houses on the market? And that's a step that I think every city is struggling with right now. It's not solely happening here in Pine Island. If you look anywhere, you're going to find this discussion being held all over the place. Ultimately, I mean, that's what we try to do here on a daily basis, is have those discussions and figure out ways that we can do that. And we are obviously open to the public's opinion on the best ways to move forward, but it is a struggle just with the ultimate cost of building infrastructure, labor costs, all of that goes into play, and ultimately the market drives those forces and what the price is going to be. That's kind of the current state of our housing market. But why is it important for us here in Pine Island to think about housing? I think it should go without saying, most people understand that Mayo Clinic is the driving economic force in our area. I want to say this year alone, Mayo Clinic added over 5,000 new employment opportunities. And that's just the people at Mayo. That's not going to include any kids that are brought with them, significant others, people like that. So just Mayo Clinic adding that many people, the Rochester market cannot sustain that growth. It's going to take the communities outside of Rochester to come up with ways to create new housing for those people to live. And yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about that. We just have to find opportunities, because people are moving to this area for Mayo, and we need to find housing for them. As far as what type of housing that is going to greatly depend. We obviously know we need more single family houses, but we really do need more apartments as well. I know some people have different opinions about if apartments are good for a community or not. But I will say this, that our school receives calls quite frequently, and more often than not, it's people who are looking for apartments to move into. And we'll see later here in the slideshow of what our vacancy rates are right now, and they're not sustainable. They're well below 5%, and 5% vacancy rate is typically what you're looking for as far as a sustainable rent market, as that 5% vacancy, and we're well below that. So that tells me one thing is that we need more apartments. So I guess the next question is, how do we attract those? It's conversations day to day. I said earlier that market forces are what really drive this, and unless people can make money, they're not going to build it. That's just the reality of the way the world works, right? Is people need to make money. But again, it's just having those conversations with developers, figuring out what do they need from us in order to drive housing forward. Is it our support in applying for low-income tax credits at the state level? Is it tax increment financing? I know that might be a touchy subject for some people as well, but it's the reality of the world that we live in. If we want to attract housing to bring down the costs in the long term, we need to figure out ways to make it affordable for these developers to build and also make money. And there are tools that we have for that, like tax increment financing. Yeah, again, it all comes back to having those conversations day in and day out, and then letting the market do the rest. But what we really try to do here is just present those opportunities to those developers, tell them about our housing studies that have been done in the Olmsted County and the Goodhue County side, and show them that there is clearly a need here, and then giving them the opportunities on where land might be available in order for that growth to occur. Yeah, that's really all we can do. We can't build the houses, but we can present the opportunities to those developers and show them that there's potential here. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Mitch, I think a large thing of what the EDA does too is we help attract businesses, right? And as a city standpoint, our goal is to grow and help this community thrive. And, with businesses, they want to come to town. A lot of the questions are going to be, hey, do you have housing to support our employees?
That's a great point.
So I think that workforce housing as well kind of has a play into this too. And that's a great way to help our community expand and grow. And you got to have housing to do that. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because we just recently, I think it was a couple months ago, we had conversations with some of our manufacturing firms here in town, and some of them would like to expand, but that is one of the first questions they have is, do you have the workforce to support it if we do grow? And again, I think that goes back to why is housing important, is because we have to grow the workforce, or the businesses are going to have a more difficult time justifying an expense to build here if they can't have the employees here. It's just, again, the reality of which we live in right now.
Yeah. And you see a lot of communities are struggling with the same thing. I think housing is just all around just so important to, growth and development everywhere. So we're definitely not the only ones facing it. And you just got to keep kind of moving along and see what we can do and try to get all the right people in the right room. All right, we'll move on to our comprehensive plan. I'll let Stephen with the city here take it away.
So I think Sandra and Mitch did a really good job of kind of pointing out some of the issues and some of the obstacles here with expanding housing in town. And, one of the tools that we have to plan for that is our comprehensive plan. It really serves as a long-term plan for the city to look at expansion and zoning changes and things like that in the surrounding area, and what our 10-year plan for the city looks like. The comp plan was last published, I believe, in 2011. So it is based on a 10-year model. So the hope was to do it again around, the 2020 mark. Obviously with COVID, things got pushed back. And so they're actually in the process of completing that comp plan now. A big part of that comp plan is collecting and analyzing data. Like they mentioned, the housing studies. Another big portion of that is community input. We had a community survey a while back, that got quite a few responses on that. And a big one concern is housing, which is a pretty common thread Another portion of that is our steering committee, which is a committee made up of community representatives that meet and have the conversations about where they would like the city to go in the future and in which direction. Again, with that older 2011 comp plan, things were certainly based around the Elk Run Bioscience Drive project, which, as you all know, never came to be. So 2011 Pine Island looks very different than 2023 Pine Island. And we're looking at different areas for expansion and moving industrial manufacturing to different places that it's going to look a little bit different than that 2011 plan. So we look forward to putting that information out there in the next couple of months here and having the community be able to see where the plans for expansion are and what kind of our long-term goal is.
Yeah, so some different things that are included in that plan. It has our strengths and weaknesses, what are the assets and where we could do some growth within the city of Pine Island. Kind of has your different census data, if you will, with the population growth, average household size, kind of tells us, what to expect and what we're going to see as far as growth goes in the future. Along with affordability, along with the stocking, the age of the stock that we do have in town here. This also goes hand in hand with transportation. We have housing. How are we going to get people to and from work? Along with the future needs and kind of where the city plans to grow.
So, I mentioned earlier about the housing studies, and here's the one for Olmsted County, where it's talking about new construction facing hurdles for those priced homes under $300,000. I know I already kind of mentioned this, but it's very difficult for developers to get under that price with the current state of infrastructure, the cost of materials, the cost of labor, and regulation costs. Like all of those things play a major factor in the price of these homes. I know like a half a mile of road just to pave it can be upwards of, I think it's around $400,000, and that's just for a half a mile of just the pavement. Those costs add up quickly, and most people want paved roads where they live. So, but it's just something that we need to take into consideration. And again, inventory. And I guess I do want to stipulate that this housing study was back in 2020, so some things have changed a little bit. But the inventory at the time was at an all-time low and was super competitive. I don't know about any people that are listening to this if you have bought a house between the years of 2016 and 2022, but if you were putting a bid on a house, you were probably bidding against anywhere from 3 to maybe 10 different people for that house, and ultimately that drove up the cost of the housing market as well. And again, here, I know I mentioned the rental vacancy. This one is for Olmsted County at 4.4%, and that's overall in Olmsted County. So obviously you have Rochester, Stewartville, Byron, all of those places where there's going to be a little more vacancy just because they have more units. But when we're talking more locally, it's even tighter than that. And again, I do want to stress that a good vacancy rate is right around that 5% mark. And if you're below that, that means you just don't have enough units. And that's kind of what we're seeing. And that's what the study showed as well. So then, speaking of Goodhue County, again, so the rental properties in Goodhue County are going to be at a 2.5%, so even tighter than Olmsted County. And this is why you hear so many people that work in housing or economic development talking about apartments, is because we see these numbers and they're too tight. We don't have enough units, and we need more affordable units. And quite frankly, with the cost of construction and infrastructure, the way to get more affordable units is you need to put more units in a smaller space, and that means apartments. And again, the market's kind of driving that. Our school system receives those calls a lot about people looking for apartments. I hear people that are looking for apartments. So it's not necessarily that we prefer apartments over single family homes. It's that's what people are asking for. So we do want to provide those opportunities as well. And again, it's that factor of the affordability too. It's just easier for developers to bring costs down with apartments than it is for single family homes. And again, at Goodhue County's studies talking about the Rochester Destination Medical Center, that's Mayo Clinic. All of those driving forces are going to be bringing people here, and we don't have the housing stock for all these people to live. So it's figuring out ways with the developers to bring more housing units here.
So to kind of take a more local view on available housing we have in the area, kind of the two major housing developments in the works as of right now are Windmill Woods Estates. The first and second editions are out on the west end of 8th Street. That is Derby Builders. Those are, your larger half acre to 1 acre lots with, larger custom built homes. We also have the Pine Prairie subdivision down on the south end of town, down by the new elementary school. Those are more your kind of a normal subdivision with single family split level homes. Again, those kind of come in at that 400 to 450 mark. Is kind of considered today's starter home. But those are kind of the two major projects we have going in town. I know there are other things in the works that developers have had their eyes on, but these are really the two that have available lots at this time. Obviously, throughout actual downtown Pine Island, our little pocket subdivisions, there's housing stock available, but these are really those two larger new subdivisions going in.
Yeah, so the Windmill Woods Estates on Second, that's built by the Derby Brothers, and that's located again on the southwest side of town. And then Pine Prairie, which is by Bigelow Homes, located by the elementary school on New Haven Road. So
I do just want to note too that if anybody is more curious about these developers do have development agreements at the city that are open to the public. So if you want to know more about the future plans for these sites, you can certainly stop by City Hall and request those documents.
The Pine Island effort, so different things from the city standpoint that we can do just to kind of promote housing and the growth here in town. Hosting a housing forum. A lot of the times with housing, really just getting the right people in the room is where a lot of the plans can happen. A lot of beautiful things can happen. So creating spaces and environments where networking can happen. And like I said, getting the right people in the right place.
Yeah, I would just stop on saying that none of us here in this room are the foremost experts on housing. and that's why we rely on bringing those people in, right? We want to bring in the developers, the bankers, the real estate agents, all of those people into a room and say, hey, what can we do to bring Pine Island forward? How can we bring more housing stock here? And then listen to them and, try not to meddle in the market, but provide them the resources that they need in order to get the growth that we're looking for and that we need, quite frankly.
Right. So potential housing programs, different ways that we can just kind of get creative, like again, to help promote this. I think one thing that the city does really well is continue to review and update the city's zoning and subdivision ordinances to eliminate barriers. How can we make this easier for developers and easier for people to actually make something happen? And then different things like TIF and tax abatement, and then along with tourism and marketing efforts as well, letting people know, hey, we got great things in Pine Island. This is a great place to build. We've got a lot to offer, and we'd love to have you, help create growth in our community.
Kind of just to piggyback on one of the points on here about the updating of city zoning and subdivision ordinances, we have a pretty unique opportunity with comprehensive plan going on right now that we can take a look at what the existing zoning portions of town are and what we want them to look like in the future as we kind of build out in the surrounding area. It's a good opportunity to look at what makes the most sense for zoning for high density housing, apartment buildings, things like that. What areas look more appealing for low density single family units. It's just a good kind of time to be on the lookout for those opportunities in the surrounding area. And I think the city is doing their due diligence in providing those paths forward for kind of a mixed use of different types of housing in the surrounding area.
Awesome. So now we'll kind of open it up for Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and kind of hear from you guys if there's anything you'd like to add or any comments, concerns, or we'd love to hear it. Maria. Oh.
Yeah, I just had a couple of things that came up while you were talking, and I understand that this is really what you're talking about is new housing. But I also think that as again part of Pine Island Age Friendly, which a year and a half ago the city did agree to become an age-friendly community and move towards an age-friendly community. One of the areas with that is talking about older adults who are living in homes that they've downsized into already and are looking for somewhere to live that is smaller yet. And those homes, in a lot of cases, would be perfect for families coming in. They probably would be at a much better market rate than any of the new homes. But you have people living in homes that are ready to transition into something else. And they want to stay in Pine Island, and we want them in Pine Island. So I think there needs to be a little bit more of an effort on looking at how to provide homes for older adults that want to transition into something smaller. And I think there are a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of the people that live in the 301 apartments, when they start looking at the cost of things in what they paid to have done in their other homes, their larger homes, they are very happy with where they are in the 301 apartments. I'm not sure that that apartment could be affordable for some of the older adults anyway. But I think that's one of the things, and demographically, it seems that the birth rate in the United States has been falling. I know it kind of leveled off right now, but I see these 3-4 bedroom homes, and I realize that maybe there's a need for them in the short term, but I think we have to look beyond that. If you have people coming in here with 8-year-olds, in 10 years, they're going to be maybe in an empty nest situation, and they're not going to want a huge home anymore. And then you'll be right back where you are now, looking at what do we do now? So looking at some of the smaller homes. The other thing is the zoning situations. I don't know what the zoning is currently for this in Pine Island, but things about having taking a garage and converting it into a space for someone to live on a property where somebody is an older adult and maybe they want to have somebody live with them so they can stay in their house as long as possible. And maybe converting some of the older houses that are larger into maybe 2 or 3 people living there. I don't know what the non-family numbers are, if we do have a zoning ordinance for non-family people living together. Things like that can be done with the housing units that you have, in addition to what you're looking at moving forward with. I guess I just don't want to lose that particular option for older adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marie, I always appreciate you being on these. You're a very strong advocate for that cause. And I absolutely agree. We get a lot of questions and a lot of demand, and people are kind of always asking about smaller, affordable, slab on grade, whether it's townhomes, twin homes, apartment buildings, like you said, just smaller, maybe 2-3 bedroom units or homes, single level accessible living. That there's very much a demand for that. We've had conversations with developers trying to bring that into town, and trying to find the appropriate places for it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, then just to touch on your additional point, the ADUs, those accessory dwelling units, that is a conversation that council has had, and something that they're probably going to have to make a decision on here soon, to see which direction they want to go with that. We don't have anything in our ordinances currently, so that's conversations that have been had, and things that we're going to continue to look forward and try to get creative with how we can address those concerns.
Well, and one of the other things that I had brought up a couple of years ago, just when we started talking about age-friendly situations, is the idea of having a development that would be smaller homes and I'm not even talking 2-bedroom homes, but I'm talking about a small cul-de-sac with maybe 8. And I know the first thing that came up from one of the people that was a developer that was there was like, well, that's going to cost a lot of money. And I'm like, you say it's going to cost a lot of money, that stops the conversation. And that's not where I'm at. I'm saying, is there a way for us to have for Pine Island to be a forward thinking community and say, we want to be a community that has this little area that has 8 houses in a cul-de-sac. One of those houses will be set aside so that if there's an intern at Mayo that is going to be here for 3 years and they want to come and live in that house, and part of what they do to offset their rent is to check in with the people living in these small houses. And I'm not talking about tiny homes, but just smaller homes, checking in with the other 8 houses that live there, people that live in those houses, and making sure that they're okay. They can be all older adults. They could be intergenerational. They could be a single adult with a child. And just one little area that could be, this is a place where people can transition into this. There are ways to do those small communities, and there isn't anything really around here that does that. And I think that is something that is so forward thinking and would be something that would put Pine Island kind of in front of a lot of the other communities, even the large communities around here.
Yeah, I mean, that's, something that had never crossed my mind. So I appreciate, like I said, the creative thinking to kind of address these problems.
Yeah, we had CETA, the company that I work for, and CETA contracts with Pine Island here to do economic development. But last year we hosted a housing forum for all of Goodhue County, and there was actually one of the presenters that we brought on. He actually does some of that work, where I want to say the company was out of Tennessee, and that they were looking at some land in Wabasha at the time. But essentially what they do is kind of what you're talking about. It's almost like a circle or oval of 8 to 10 units, and then they all share like a backyard community type space. But they're all, smaller homes, 1-2-bedroom homes. They have a garage. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. And it's something that we have thought about in the past. And it was actually something I brought up to a landowner here who has some underutilized property that we think could have been a great space for it. And I pitched it to him, still kind of having that conversation, but I don't know if it's necessarily going anywhere yet. But yeah, I think that type of housing could be a great solution, because you can get more homes in a smaller area, kind of what I was talking about with apartments, but you can do it with more single family type stuff, just smaller scale.
Yeah, and I think even looking back at, I attended, I don't know, maybe Mitch, you're familiar with Main Street America?
Yep, I've heard of it.
Okay, I attended a webinar of theirs, and I have a really good contact there. She's used to also, by the way, working with cities and counties, particularly cities that have main streets that are county roads. And so a lot of what they were talking about is not even beyond that. Also, the idea of again, the houses that have 4 units together. And maybe it's 2 stories. It's not going to help a lot of the older adults. You could have older adults living in the downstairs, and you could have younger people living above. But doing more of that would give people the feeling of a little more space than an apartment, and be just be another option, I guess.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, we appreciate it. I mean, that's why we're having this discussion, is because we need to have more people talking to kind of get those ideas out there, and how can we get more housing here. I mean, like you said, with maybe not even taking up more land, but it provides more housing units themselves.
Right. Okay, thanks.
And I think something that Mitch touched on in there that kind of stuck out to me is one of the roadblocks we kind of run into around here is there's a lot of underutilized land that we just don't have any control over, and things may happen there, they may not. I mean, I could drive around town and see, on the edge of town, oh, there's 2 acres here there's nothing really going on. It would be great for putting in this, and this, but that landowner may have no interest in selling and no interest in developing. And, it's unfortunately a lot of it's out of our control. I think Pine Island has a ton of potential to add and grow. But we kind of just need everyone on the same page and everyone working together to get that done. And I think slowly we're changing some minds and moving some hearts, but it is the long game. It is a drawn out process. So, we're doing chunks at a time here, but hopefully in the near future, we'll see some new exciting things.
I have just one other last thing. The new development, maybe not the custom homes, but the other homes. Are you moving more towards universal design where the homes are going to be having wider doorways? So if essentially down the road you've got an ability for wheelchair capacity, things like that. Is universal design part of what the Bigelow's doing in their homes or not?
I don't know off the top of my head. A lot of those decisions are kind of developer specific. I can absolutely reach out to them.
Okay, yeah, because I think the city can have some say. I don't want to say requirements, but I think in a lot of the new housing that's coming, the more universal design we can get where a home can be utilized by people with mobility issues, whether they're young or old, is important to have at least a few of those in, if not all the houses, but at least a few of those available. I know a person who is in her 50s and her husband has a lot of medical concerns, and she could not find a zero entry home in Rochester that they could move into, so she had to move to Stewartville. So I think that's the other component to the new developments coming in, is that universal design be at least part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great point.
This is Kelly, and Marie's touched on a lot of beautiful points. And one of the points that is really interesting for me is how culture and type of family units have really been the driver in what type of housing that we live in. And I'm just wondering, are there any developers out there that are privy to or consider culturally how different families live in their homes? And I'm thinking of multi-generational too. And I liked Marie's idea about the circular living piece, because the single family homes are really for the nuclear family. And I will, a disclaimer, I watch a lot of HGTV when I'm traveling and I can afford, or I can watch cable. And there's a lot of people that are looking for like two sets of individuals that are really autonomous, or individuals, like they have their own life, like a mother-daughter unit, or a different family moving in, which means they have the communal meeting space, but then they have their own individuals. And what I see growing up are really those nuclear family lifestyles that I'm not sure if they're driving the market, or if that's just what the market has available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to speak for any developers, whether they're taking that into consideration or not. I know we had invited some additional people to join us today. I think they're still trying to finish up some projects before the snow flies, and it's kind of dragging out their development season. But I would like to give them some credit and think that maybe they do take that into consideration, when they're looking at beyond just the single family. But like
Yeah.
Mitch kind of said, we're not experts, so I'm not sure exactly their thought process in that development, but it's certainly something that, if they show interest in something in town, that we can ask questions about.
Yeah, Marie really nibbled at it and bit at it quite a few different ways. And so I'm just curious. It was just is like, are developers considering the dynamics and how they're changing, and 20 years down the road, how the baby boomers and maybe how the other generations are wanting to live, and then offering houses that speak to that. Or because I also know that plans are expensive, and Bigelow has had their same plan, and they've changed a little bit over the years, but then they'll just mass produce these things. And so then the house determines how you're going to live.
Right. Well, and I think with that, Kelly, one of the things is another example of someone I know who's in her 40s and she's marrying a gentleman who has a son who just graduated who is autistic, and while he can live and wants his own space, he can't live by himself in a separate location. So I think, again, I don't know what the, I'm not a government expert or anything like that, but I think that there are situations where, the city can have some influence on them, but also, hey, why can't Pine Island go out and, really find a developer who's going to say, like this person who's building these houses in Tennessee, let's look for a developer who's going to say, let's think outside of the box and have something unique. That's going to put Pine Island on the map too.
Right, that collaborative piece.
Yeah, we can have that unique thing, and it's like, hey, let's just do this and
Right.
forward instead of following. And the question that I think, Kelly, what you're getting at is who's driving the bus.
Right.
I understand the idea of making money. I mean, everybody wants to be profitable in their business. I'm not a good example of that, but everybody could be profitable in their business. And that's important, but we need to be looking at things in a different way as people have children later in their lives or choose not to have children, and families are getting smaller. And again, like Kelly said, people wanting to have multiple generations living in the same general space, but not necessarily the same exact house, or the same style of house as we have for single families.
Kelly is going to, in question 2, the marketing piece, and this really is a chamber question. I think the chamber is more than willing and would love to collaborate further on that tourism and marketing effort. The chamber recognizes that is a growing segment of Pine Island. It might not have always been a driver for our community, but it will continue to be. And we're uniquely positioned to be able to assist in that, especially through the Explore Minnesota website. And I think families more and more are wanting to, I know this is just a known issue, wanting to know a good place to go to find out what's happening where and when. And so for the chamber, I know that that's one of our efforts. And so we're always open to collaborate, and we're an email away, a phone call away, to always say, how can we do this? And I know granting efforts will come again. And so just know that we're ready for it.
Absolutely. No, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to collab. I think that, like you said, getting everything out there and showing everyone that Pine Island's a great place to be and raise your family and everything else that we can do here. I think that's a great point. Jen, I see you got your hand up. We'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Jen Kramer. I moved to Pine Island, I don't know, 20 some years ago when I got married. And this is all great. I jumped on a little bit late because I had a work call as well that I was on that ran over. So I didn't hear the whole entire conversation, but I am excited that we are kind of bringing some of these issues, I guess, up. One thing that I would like the team to kind of consider is more affordable housing, right? I mean, my parents live in a 4 or 5 bedroom house. They would love to downsize, but the housing market to downsize is more money than what they're currently paying for their mortgage, right? So looking for affordable options for them as well to downsize is a huge thing as well. So these smaller communities or some type of apartment or something that they can still have their own space, but still making it affordable, right? I think the Main Street Apartments had a very good idea, but for some people that they're just not affordable. So we really need to look at affordable housing as well. If it's young families or our older generation, we really need to kind of keep it affordable. And I know interest rates and all of that make that really difficult even for a developer to make it affordable, but just something to think about there is trying to keep the cost down for either a new family or someone that may be transitioning out of their long-term home.
Yeah, absolutely, Jen. That's a great point. And we did kind of touch on that, but I think maybe we can expand a little bit more too, is, how do we make homes more affordable? And I think the first thing we have to do is better educate people on who's actually living in affordable housing. Because a lot of times people in the public, they hear affordable and their mind instantly goes one place, but that's really not the case. A lot of times affordable are people like you're talking about, the older generation or young families who are just getting started. Those people need affordable housing. I mean, I know when me and my wife first moved in together, she was going to grad school and I was working. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of money, but we lived in more affordable housing because that's all we could do. But I think there's a lot more people like that and the older generations that need that affordability. And I think the first question is, how do we do it? There's tools that we have. There's low income tax credits at the state level. There's tax increment financing, tax abatement that the city can use. It's utilizing partners like Three Rivers Community Action or the county level assistance programs. Can we create some partnerships to help bring down those costs? Because ultimately, again, it stems back to that market. Developers aren't going to build something that they're losing money on. So we need to figure out ways to lower those costs, whether it's through the tax increment financing where, they get a little bit back on their taxes versus paying for all that. Is there ways that we can help pay for infrastructure costs, like extending sewer and water lines or the street builds, things like that? Anything else that we can think of is how can we bring down those costs so that they can reduce the cost of a small home or the apartment units. I think that's all part of one big equation, and it's figuring out how to piece it all together and where it goes that we need to figure out as well. But that's a great point. It needs to happen.
Yes, most definitely. And it can't, I mean, we always go back to taxes, right? Let's raise taxes to try to get something else in, but I don't know, being in these bedroom communities to Rochester, located on Highway 52, it is crazy what our current tax bracket is here. And obviously everybody's received their tax stuff for next year, and we have another increase on us. So I know of folks that would love to, move back to Pine Island and be closer with their families here, but they look at, the taxes on the current houses here in Pine Island, and they're like, no, that's way too, out of my price range, right? And I know it still comes back to trying to get bigger businesses and that kind of thing as well. So I think we still need to continue to look at, getting other people other than houses to pay the taxes in Pine Island, because I really think that's an issue too, right? I mean, some developers won't look at Pine Island because of the tax issues that we have. So it goes hand in hand, and I truly hope that the council is looking at that, because we cannot continue to raise taxes across the residential area here in Pine Island. So
yeah, and just your point about things going hand in hand, we kind of touched on it earlier in the presentation, but
Okay,
you know,
sorry.
obviously you bring in, no, just, it's a good way to kind of reiterate and bring it full circle. We talk about, you know, having larger manufacturers or larger businesses, they absorb a little bit more of that tax impact, which, you know, kind of lessens the burden for residential taxes. But then it comes around to the point where, you know, if a manufacturer wants to expand, they need the housing in order to have the workforce to expand. So we have to expand the
Yes.
housing sector. And it's just, like you said, it all goes hand in hand. It's all one big continuous flow, and we have to kind of make sure we're hitting the right spots to make them all click. So absolutely, you know, an increase in the manufacturing and industrial sector would you know, help across the board. But again, the housing demand has to be there for that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, to your point, we do need more business growth. I don't want this conversation to think that, you know, we're only thinking about housing, but we are always thinking about more business growth too, because we understand that, you know, while getting new houses are great, they don't necessarily pay for new streets, right? The
Yeah.
cost for taxes for homeowners is going to be way too high in order to keep that going. So we do need to attract more businesses, and it's something that we're always thinking about. And then it's finding the land opportunities for these businesses to go, and it's something that I've been working on for the last couple of years. And I will just say it takes longer than you think for these things to happen. There's conversations that we're having right now that have been ongoing for probably the better part of a year. And
Yeah.
before anything happens, I wouldn't be surprised if it's another 2 or 3 years. It just takes more time than housing. But again, like Steven said, it's, you know, chicken and the egg sort of thing. Is the manufacturers want to grow, but they need that workforce. So what can we do to help facilitate it all, and how do we balance it? But you are absolutely right. We do need more business growth to offset those taxes.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Apologize for coming into the conversation late, but thank you for kind of tying
Nope.
it all together.
No, that's just fine.
Yeah, we love hearing it all, and these are recorded too, so we will post them to the website. So if you want to kind of run back through and listen to this, or you know, share this with somebody, by all means, we'd love that, and we do encourage that too.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna try
thank
to
you.
raise my hand. Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
I raised my hand. One of the questions, or one of the issues about the ADUs that I'm aware of has to do with plot size or lot size. And I don't know if that's accurate. And is that like a national standard that there has to be a certain lot size before an ADU can be considered to be built on it? And that would kind of circle back to Marie's thought about a garage being converted into an ADU.
I am not aware of anything on a national scale or state level. I think a lot of that is decided at the local level, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I do believe it's more local level, and I would say it's a conversation that is happening in nearly every city across the state right now. Is how do we do that? You know, what size lot it is, and you know, but you also have to take the community aspect involved as well. As what do the people who live in that neighborhood want that neighborhood to be like as well. So those are considerations in there. But again, it's how do we keep it all together? What's the right equation? How do you grow and do that? And
Sure.
yeah, I guess the direct answer to your question is no. I'm not aware of anything on the state or national level. I think it's all local level decisions.
And then the follow-up question would be then, because you're saying that they are being addressed, is there getting back to the steering committee and then the public input, is that going to be an ongoing conversation, or is that something that is going to be like a top-down decision made?
No, I think we've had conversations, you know, staff internally, we've had conversations at some city council meetings about it. We've kind of we haven't made an official city ordinance on it, just because we were kind of waiting and gauging community interest in it. We've heard a limited kind of request for it, but I mean, if we keep having, you know, these discussions and we keep hearing it echoed, I think it's something that we may have to act on sooner rather than later.
Sure.
But yeah, so I mean, the discussions have happened. It just no concrete ordinance has come from it yet. But as we see these trends in housing studies, and I'm assuming the data that was collected for the comp plan will bear out, needing to address that soon.
I'm wondering, just if, I didn't even know about an ADU, so this, I'm learning about what this is. If that's something that people don't know what they don't know. But it's just something that is back in their brain, like, oh, it would be nice someday, and they don't even know that it might be prohibitive. And so when you're thinking about stakeholders coming to the table and collaborating on creating this comprehensive plan going for the 10 years, educating the public also a little bit about, you know, the city is considering additional dwelling units, and this is what that means, might garner a little bit more curiosity, or, oh yes, or are you only going to want people such as Marie, who's definitely invested in possibly, and it has the backing of an organization that the city said that they're collaborating with. Are they only going to be the stakeholders that are involved? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to maybe housing topics, you know, some more focused stakeholder meetings might be warranted. You know, I think it's housing kind of a recurring topic with the Pine Island Aid Friendly Group. But maybe we need to kind of look elsewhere and see what other organizations have a stake in that discussion and bring them kind of into the fold as well.
Yeah, and just the final thought. I know that one of the main things for aging people too, and that would be myself, is aging in place is a common theme also. Like, people might not necessarily want to move out of their established home, but they can't handle all of it. And so anyway, that's really the impetus of what I was thinking about, of like creating, we can be leaders, and Marie touched on this too, is, you know, Pine Island can be the leader in creating something new. We can, and we've shown that by the water treatment facility, is we think outside of the box, and we're collaborative, and we're working together. We're recognized as a community. So I just want to thank you for having this play-by-play too. So thank you for thinking outside of the box in that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. That was so sweet. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today in our discussions and kind of talking about housing. Like, you know, we like to have these conversations and kind of get community input and at least have the conversation. So we appreciate you all being here with us today. Again, these are recorded, so these will be posted on our website. And yeah, we thank you guys so much, and hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, and just to reiterate from the very beginning again, these aren't the end of the conversation. This is just kind of a jumping off point. So City Hall and the EDA are always available by email, by phone. If you think of something after the fact that you want to touch on or make us aware of, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.